Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Alright, so let's do a week in Bryan. We are, uh, I'll get into the stuff, um, like fun stuff, in a minute, but um, I did want to mention that after last week, uh, an old friend of mine, I haven't talked to in several years, aside from the occasional Facebook chat, who I used to actually do live action role playing and go see him and the Rocky Horror Picture Show quite a bit, passed away. In fact, he chose to leave us. I won't get into the specifics, but it was hard to hear, especially knowing how just jovial and how much life was in Ed. But I also know that he had a lot going on. I know that his brother's suicide weighed very heavily on his mind. I know that life's not easy for everybody. Life's not easy for anybody, honestly, and it took a pretty heavy toll on him. A few weeks before, he made a post on his social media talking about how he had a dream about, what his funeral would be like. And it was a post that, in typical Ed fashion, it was poking fun at life, filled with jokes. And he was very specific in that he did not want people to be sad. He was hoping that his wake would be a party, that it would be almost like a roast, and that it wouldn't be a bunch of social media posts and people throwing posts out into the void and things like that. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking about it here. I just wanted to express, if you know someone who's having a hard time, or if you are someone who's having a hard time, try and be there for them. And if you are that person who is struggling, even if you need a stranger, reach out to somebody, and try and make those connections and try and make things come together, before anything happens that you can't ever take back. And that's not even just a statement of a particular person or a particular event. That's just in general. Is I try to throw out positivity here on the channel, which is why I wanted to get this out of the way. Because I really do just want to make every situation, every room that I enter, a little happier and a little better when I leave it. And I take that as a full metaphor for this entire life. Is I hope that the room that I have been in is a little better and a little more pleasant and a little happier than when I eventually leave it. So before we get on into good stuff, I just want to express my sympathy to anyone and everyone who knows, who knew Ed, and for all of you out there who have your own Ed close to you in your heart because of recent losses, or maybe not so recent, that my heart goes out to you guys, and I hope that we all exit every room a little happier than when we went in. All right, give me a second. Okay. Had a chance to clear my brain and get back to the week in Bryan on a happier side of things. First and foremost, as that this is the first video of September, I get to announce the comment raffle winner for August, and that would be, excuse me, Justin Ankeny from his comment in episode 154. Funny thing about Justin, he is a local to my area, so I might not have to actually send postage to give him his raffle winnings. But also, he is a dedicated demo volunteer for Renegade Games. So he ran a bunch of stuff at Gen Con. I think he ran some stuff at Origins. I'm assuming that he will continue to do so. So, big thumbs up to my man Justin for winning. I will post this up off of that comment. Everything is awesome. Also, beginning of September, my son and I we posted this on Facebook, and I will post the donate button on the video too. We are playing video games for the month of September for Blood Cancer Awareness Month. We have to play at least 30 hours worth of video games the month of September, which will not be hard to do for the two of us. We play a lot of video games. And it's not a matter of like for every hour we play or anything like that. It's just there's a donated pool of money that goes to Blood Cancer Awareness, and if we reach our goal, I believe we get our names in a list or something like that that says, you know, we did our part. So either way, super excited about that. I'll make sure to put the link in the description of the video, so that way, if anybody wants to make a donation directly to Blood Cancer Awareness Fund, they can. So that's a little bit of my personal. Let's see what else personal. I got to play in the second session of my wife's first ever D&D game that she is running, her own world called Land of Monsters. It went well. It went a little long. I think that she is figuring out kind of the good pacing of, you know, how many skill checks do I ask for, how long do I give them to role play in a particular scene before I try to move them on. If there was one negative to this session, is because it was the first one that my son Connor was able to be at. It took a long time to get his character introduced, so he was sitting at the table kind of bored. I mean, he was listening and he was part of what was going on, but I could tell that he was kind of like, all right, get me in the game. On top of that, he also was fighting a sinus infection that we didn't realize was coming in, so he was kind of sneezy, nose blowing, and miserable for most of that session. So hoping the next session, when it comes around, that we are in good shape. So we got to play that. Played a little bit of video. I'm playing a little bit more of Multiverses, the Warner Brother versions of Smash Bros. Having a good time. It's fun. I can't play it for long. I can't like marathon the game. It's just a little too repetitive for me to want to play it for hours on end. But it is a good time, and it is fast. Like, I can just throw down and get a couple of games in and go, all right, cool. Unlike a lot of the other games that I play that are time investments. So I think Multiverses is probably going to be one of the ways that I smash through these 30 hours, is that if I need to get like a quick hour in, I'll probably hop into that. Let's see, what else? I've been painting some models. If you hear in the background that kind of whir buzz, that is my 3D printer working. I am making a cool beholder themed can cozy for one of my friends. It's going to eat up a lot of resin, but I think it's going to be worth it. I think that it's going to be a good time. Yeah, that's really it personally. Not a lot going on, regular everyday stuff. Work wise, had some very cool conversations with some very cool people on a Warzone related project. Um, More on that in the future as things shape together. When that starts, once we get some of the sideline contracts signed, sealed, and delivered, we'll be able to start talking a little bit more about that. But I definitely, if you're a Warzone fan, that's going to be really cool when we can tell people more about this extra little thing that we're doing. It's going to be cool. Put some words down for a Shadowrun short story. Not quite done with it yet, but I'm having a good time with it. Shorts are always fun, just for the sheer fact that you can get you can basically start right in the action, stay with the action, and then kind of end on a high note. You don't have to do a lot of exposition. It's just really sort of a slice of life in the Shadowrun universe, and I dig those. I'm always a fan of that kind of thing. Work for Renegade. I officially started on a big old project, a big old Power Rangers project, which will probably take me the better part of a month to get it squirreled away and all said and done. My new direct supervisor over there, Kevin, he and I have been working hand in hand to try and make this the coolest book that it can be. And we are toying around with some cool new concepts and ideas that I think the final product is going to shine because of it. So more on that when I can talk about it. But yeah, so it's speaking of which, on the last week, I made the mistake of saying that the Michigan GT was last weekend, and that I was going to be sad that I couldn't be there. I was wrong. I looked at my calendar incorrectly. I bopped it forward an entire month. It's not until the end of September is the Michigan GT. So I've got a whole month before then. I'm still working out the details. I might still be able to go to that and hopefully run some events and things. So cross my fingers. Hopefully that will be a thing that I can make happen if I can get those guys to hook me up. Yeah, so I mean that's really it. Renegade stuff, Warzone stuff, a little bit of Shadowrun stuff, a little bit of painting stuff. Okay, so I have a lot of stuff. I don't sleep very much. Yeah, no, it's been good. This upcoming weekend, I get to run my very heavily my very minis heavy D&D game down in Indianapolis. I am excited. The rest of the I've already got everything painted and mapped out for the rest of this chapter in their overall adventure. I am looking very much forward to them running into a couple of different chambers along the way. There are a few rooms that I hope are entertaining and not just a grind. But this particular chunk of their adventure, their overarching campaign, is very old school D&D. Lots of old school monsters, lots of traps, an old school dungeon crawl. So I'm excited to see where they go, what they do, how they take into consideration some of the things that will be happening to them. Yeah, so just really kind of happy about that kind of stuff. My nose itches. Yeah. So aside from that, I think let's just get into it. Let's just get into the topic. So you saw the thumbnail. You saw the thumbnail. You read the thing. You know what this is about. A couple weeks ago, the One D&D beta, like kind of like playtest document was released, and I was going to talk a little bit about it on other socials, but I decided I was going to go ahead and give it a second, read through it a couple of times, um, listen to some of the arguments and conversations and debates, discussions on the various socials. I'm actually in the playtest Facebook group, um, so I I wanted to kind of let all that stuff digest before I gave my initial thoughts. Now, before I move forward, I do want to let you know that these are just my opinions. These are my educated opinions based off of 20 years in the industry as a game player, designer, developer, so forth and so on. Um, Obviously, I have lots of ideas that I would do in if someone handed me the reins. Um, so some of what you're going to see, or some of what I'm going to talk about, is probably the if I were to be in charge, what I would do in their place. Um, that is not to say that I think what they did is wrong or bad, unless I say so. Um, it's just that I think that there is better ways to do it to make the game more cohesive, more fun, perhaps less. Well, we'll get into it. All right. So take a drink of my branded Powerade energy something. All right. So, um, One D&D, they announced it last year, and when they did, it wasn't that they were specifically, they said that it is not an edition change, that it is not 5.5, it is not 6th edition, it is just basically a modular adaptation of 5th edition, and I see what they're trying to do. I think that the edition wars is something that does cause a lot of grief. This has already rekindled the what's better Pathfinder 2 to 1D&D to 5e to masks to whatever your favorite thing is, Essence 20. But what it does is it does keep people talking. It does keep people excited about things, even if some of the press is negative because people are arguing and being dumb about things and not realizing that everybody can have fun and everybody can win. It does keep the topic fresh, and it does show that as a company, Wizards of the Coast is willing to look at how to apply the player base at large. When we get to my final thoughts, I'll explain my opinion on what they're doing with 1D&D. But let's just talk about the actual bullet points in the playtest. Now, obviously, the playtest document does not have everything. It doesn't have all of the ins and outs. They're giving it to us in chunks because they want people to focus on individual aspects rather than being like, all right, here's everything, good luck. We get to really put some of this stuff under a microscope. So what I did is I made some notes to just kind of have a discussion about the points, the particular points in that first playtest document that have been heavily debated. First and foremost, one of the things that they talk about is the D20 test. So in past versions of D&D, they basically just always ask, hey, make an attack roll, make a skill roll, make a survival check, or make a saving throw. And each one of these, an ability check is a skill check, is it a death save, is it like if everything is very specific. They are looking at changing the nomenclature of any time that you roll a d20, it is called a d20 test. And so that means that things like lucky, that allow you to re-roll a d20 in current version, where it's like you can re-roll a saving throw or this or that, it will now say you may re-roll a d20 test. So just to make it a blanket statement, or if it's something very specific, like maybe like a fighter's feat or something, it'll say you may re-roll the d20 test as part of an attack, or something along those lines. It's really just about trying to make a better, make more blanket conditions that are just, you can point out to that thing and say, this is it, this is what it is. So I can get behind that. I think that's fine. Calling everything d20 tests, that's fine. What I do not, what I am not necessarily a fan of, is that on all d20 tests in the playtest document, all d20 tests are set up with the same general schematic. Roll a d20, add X modifiers, equal to or exceed the difficulty class of what you're trying to do, and you succeed. That's fine. It's always been that way. But what they are adding is, because now all d20 tests are all d20 tests, a 1 is always a fumble, and a 20 is always a success. So that means that even if you are the best of the best of the best at something, you always have a 5% chance to fail. No matter how easy it is, no matter how simplistic the moment might seem, you have a 5% chance of just not being able to do it. That's like saying that every single time your heart surgeon, sits down to do a procedure, no matter how simple it might be, they have a 5% chance of screwing it up. That's really high, and I very much dislike it. The reason why I don't like that as a mechanic, I don't like alwayses as mechanics. I don't like one's always hit or one's always miss and 20 is always hit. I don't like that, because there should be instances where common sense takes over, where if you have a plus 15 to your to your sing a tune skill, and you go, I'm going to try and sing a lullaby. A basic children's lullaby is probably like DC 10, meaning that if I roll a 1, I still get a 16. I'm able to, Beyonce knows how to sing her own songs, and with very little exceptions is going to be able to do it. Having every single roll of 1 be a failure, no matter what, is problematic. It's just, there are some things that you should just be able to do. You should be able to, and yeah, I know a lot of times we don't know whether or not there's going to be a take 10 aspect, a take 20 aspect, like in previous editions, where like if you just take extra time, you can just consider to have rolled a 5 or a 10 on your die, or a 20 on your die, or whatever. We don't know if that's actually gonna stay in the system or come back to the system. And yes, that does take into consideration that sort of thing, but it also adds an extra weird mechanic, whereas you could just leave out the auto fail, and it's there. The opposite is also true. The auto pass is, in my opinion, more heinous than the auto fail. That means that if my dice are just really good, I could have a field mouse kill a great worm red dragon. That is stupid. And I know a lot of people are like, well, yeah, the DM's gonna need to step in, and that's just asinine. Except anytime that you force the DM to make that kind of call against the rules, to make a house ruling, you're forcing them to railroad the scene. You're forcing them to look at someone and say, I know you have technically have a 5% chance of always succeeding. Not this time. And that basically that makes the DM, yeah, it adds more power to the DM, the narrative, to create the narrative, but it also lends more power to the DM to block situations, to be that person who looks at his players and says, no, you can't do that. And I know that that's something that a lot of players and a lot of gamers in the current generation of gaming really don't like. They don't like being told no. And putting that kind of power in the hands of the DM, specifically to say no because it doesn't make sense. No, your peasant with a sharp stone can't kill Smaug. You can't walk into the tavern, look at the barmaid who is working 12 hours a day and persuade them to give you and your friends a free meal that's going to come out of her wages, or worse, create problematic scenes that other people at the table might be like, I'm against that. No, but 1 in 20 chance. You're going to get players that are going to try the most outlandish things because they have a 5% chance of success. And that's going to be a problem. And that's not even just attacks. I don't like current 5e, the fact that a 20 always hits. I don't like that anyway. I'm a firm believer that there should be instances where you are outclassed and you have to retreat. There are instances in every story where the good guys have to pull back because the bad guy's too tough, and have their training montage, have their cool up. Video games, people have to grind levels all the time. I get it. They want, a lot of current gamers want that cinematic, full narrative, over rules crunch. Give me that opportunity for my plucky adventurer to get that 1 in a million chance. Well, it's not 1 in a million. It's 5%. It's 1 in 20. That's insane, and I highly dislike that ruling that 20s on D20 tests are always wins and 1s are always failures. I think that it is going to lead to superhero complexes. I think that it's going to lead to DMs having to step in and basically take the reins over their games even more so than they already do. And it's going to lead to some bad blood and some bad interactions. If you've got a tense situation and the DM just goes, nope. I know I've been in situations like that where the DM just doesn't let someone do something, and by the rules they should, and the player then gets salty, gets upset, DM just doesn't want me to win, that sort of thing. I think it's going to lead to more to that. I know that the concept is sound, to make things easier on came up with 20, success. I get that. I just don't agree with it. Another thing that changed is how critical hits function. So critical hits are now only performed by the players, or in very specific instances designed by the DM. Monsters in the One D&D playtest do not generate critical hits. This is again made so a group of 15 goblins don't accidentally crit out the heroes. And this falls under a category of I don't like how I don't want to sound like a jerk. I don't like how soft the arena has to be for this next generation of D&D. That it's all very heavily leaned towards player. And I get it. The players are important. They're the stars of the show. But they should be challenged. They should be afraid of certain circumstances. There should be those instances where weird things happen. And I don't like the fact that they're taking the teeth out of, how many games have you played in where the DM rolls that crit from a bad guy and that becomes suddenly this big tense moment? Oh my god, I'm gonna go down. If you know that the monsters can't do anything but d6 damage ever, if this guy shot me with an arrow and it did d6 damage, d6 plus 1, and I've got 8 hit points and I know the most he can do is 7, I'm super brave because it doesn't matter. I'm going to be able to take whatever he shoots at me and go deal with him. But if there's a risk, if there's that chance that it could go badly for me, I might still react more realistically. I might seek cover. I might not just barrel down the hallway and be like, whatever. I don't like the fact that monsters by themselves can't just critically hit. I think that it puts too much star power on the stars of the show, on the protagonists, the player characters. Also, it does say that there will be instances where like certain monsters might have like once a scene, or like a special character, or a big boss or a sub boss or something like that might have a basically legendary action that lets them turn a hit into a crit. Again, this puts so much effort, so much weight on the shoulders of the DM to make those decisions that it could lead to favoritism. It could lead to characters that, how often has a DM said, hey, how many points do you have? Because they want to maybe take it a little easy on you. But now it's just open. It's, all right, the big fighter who's been dealing all the damage, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit him, I'm going to spend it, I'm going to do the crit, and I'm going to knock him way down. It turns the DM, it makes the DM, that power is just straight up adversarial. It is a decision to choose to be harder than you need to be in that moment, and it's not dictated by the dice. It's not directed by the powers of randomness, the draw of the draw of the card, the roll of the die. That's what this game is about, and it's what sets the DM apart from just narrating everything. And the more stuff that you're saying that the DM gets to narrate, gets to choose, gets to make the decisions, the closer it is to just basically telling a story and not having any rules. And that I think that's wrong, in my opinion. I disagree with it. We are the term race. They're still keeping the term race. And while it doesn't bother me, I know that it does bother a lot of people. And I know that there's been some problematic media coverage over racial stereotypes and things like that. One of the things that they should really do is move to say species instead of race. Because elves are a different species than dwarves, or a different species than humans, or a different species than Githyanki. And that would take a good step forward to at least point out the fact that these biological creatures are different entities, and that it's not it's not based all off of culture. It's not, dwarves are just short humans. I think that would actually, it's a simply nomenclature, but I do think that would be a good idea. Speaking of racial abilities, they're taking away the racial modifiers. I've talked about this before. I don't like it. I know that there's a lot of people that are like, well, ASI's ability stat improvements. I know that a lot of people think that they lean towards creating racial stereotypes, that it's exclusivism, I can't say that word, something like that. I don't necessarily agree, and I think that it is a situation where people are making a very big deal out of something that's not, unless you choose to make it a big deal. I don't think there's anything wrong biologically if you've got a species that magically is attached, to breeds of genie, you've got literal stone for flesh, or my dad was a 40 foot tall cloud giant. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that biologically that creature is stronger. There is, I mean, there, not to try and pound a situation home, but chimpanzees in reality are stronger than humans, unless you're one of the outliers that like have trained yourself. Just like in D&D, you could have a human that has worked his strength up through feats and characters, or good dice rolls or whatever, but as a species they are simply stronger than we are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, as long as you don't tie it to their culture or tie it to their learning. Like, I don't agree with saying, well, all orcs are stupid. That's dumb. I mean, not to be punny. I think that you can say that they have, their musculature. I'm a big believer in your physical statistics should be tied to your race, to your species, and your mental and social should be tied to your background. If you have an academic background, you should probably have a higher intelligence, which is actually something that One D&D is doing, is they're putting all the ASIs in backgrounds. And this is where I think that One D&D should split them. I think that your ASIs should, rather than having, everything be blanket, everybody gets +2 +1, everybody gets this, everybody gets that. I think that your every species should get some kind of modifier to your physical stats, and your backgrounds should be based off of your mental and social stats should be based off of your background. And I think that you could have specific instances. You could have, like, if your background is that of a soldier, rather than saying this makes you stronger, you should maybe get better, maybe give them, which actually leads into perks, or not perks, feats. Two Essence 20 related. It should give you training. Maybe as the soldier background, even if you're a wizard or something like that, you get more weapon training, or you get a feat for one of those first level feats that's like +1 to hit in close combat, or something like that. I think there's a more elegant way to do it that doesn't just discount the fact that a 10-foot tall elephant man should be stronger on a general basis than a 3-foot tall halfling or a 2-foot tall pixie. Again, I know a lot of people are like, "Let's you're borderline being racist." I'm not saying culturally label the species. I'm saying biologically, your physical statistics, with some exception. Obviously, if you choose to make your character into the strongest halfling that there is, awesome. You're a little pile of muscles, and that's cool. But as a whole, as a general average, physically, the halfling should be more nimble than, say, the giant elephant guy. Like, it's just, it is. And I don't, it falls into the category of, again, I think the current leaning towards a lot of gaming it's leaning very heavily towards players get their way, and that's just how it is. And the DM has to adjust, because it's all about telling the story, which it really is. I've said that before here. It is a cooperative effort to tell the story, but I do think that there are instances where if I sit down at a table and the character that I'm sitting across from is just ridiculously put together, it takes me out of that story, because it reminds me, oh, this guy's just basically playing the system. and that's annoying, in my opinion. Again, this is all my opinion. Let's see. I do know that they are adding more, which again, this is that whole thing of, they're taking the ASIs away from the races, but they are giving them more racial abilities, things that all of them can do. Like stone sense, or creating fire, or whatever they attach to that particular species, that particular race. And so I like that. I like giving them more things. It's almost kind of heralds back to a little bit of 4th edition D&D, where like every species had like a once per day power. It sounds like they're going to give some more of that kind of stuff to the races, to make them individual, and not just by taking this race you're short, or by taking this race you're tall. They're gonna put some more racial like specifics in there, but then they won't give them the ASIs. Again, it seems like it's one of those, you're doing it one way with one thing, and you're doing it one way with the other thing. Why not just deal with it? Why not just make the races into their biological states, and then again tie all of the cultural, social, mental, learning, all that kind of stuff, tie that to the backgrounds, because that's where you learn, that's where you get your, because I firmly believe that not every orc should be a low tech Cockney savage. I think that's silly. I love the concept of militarized orcs, like a full on, like a soldier class of, like take the Urukai, but then make them all like they spend an hour a day researching Sun Tzu. Like that's the kind of stuff that I would love to see, and that's based on background, not race. But 8 feet tall and made solely of muscle with bones as dense as iron, you're not going to have a strength 7. Sorry. I mentioned feats. So it sounds like they are feats in 5e have always been kind of lackluster, because they're far and few between, and more often than not, unless there's something special that you want out of them, you'd almost rather have the ability score bonuses instead of the feat. And it sounds like we're getting more feats, possibly more chances to get them. I don't know, because I don't think they're changing the lineups on the class roll, the actual class tables themselves. But I do know that there's going to be a lot of, like, most of the backgrounds have feats that you get kind of as part of the background, which is cool. I dig that. Again, training, it's awesome. But the feats are going to have a level associated to them, which I can get behind. I like that. In fact, we actually do the same thing with several perks in Essence 20, is have the level that you have to be before you can take this. And I like that, because it means you can have some feats be more powerful than others without making it, well, an auto. This is an auto include. I'm taking this one. You could actually have 2 or 3 feats that are similar in nature, but have one you can have at level 1, one you gotta get when you're at level 5. Rather than having the feat itself be the prerequisite, you can just be like, no, I'll just wait a little longer and then pick it up later at a better version. And I think that's cool. I think it's neat. I hope that they don't tie getting a feat to the when you get to boost your stats, like the either or thing. I think that it'd be nice to just have it be something that, like, kind of like it was before in 3.5, is, every 4 levels you get a feat, or every 3 levels you get a feat, and every 4 levels you get an ASI bump. That's kind of what that's the way I look at it. But I also know that One D&D is not supposed to be changing much from the former source books, just kind of how it's applied. So we'll see how that goes. But in that same vein of thinking, they are changing spell lists. So instead of there being paladin spells and ranger spells and druid spells and sorcerer spells and warlock spells. There's just going to be 3 families of spells. There's going to be arcane spells, divine spells, and primal spells. So people like rangers and druids will probably draw from primal spells. Clerics and paladins will probably draw from divine. Wizards and sorcerers will draw from arcane, and then I'm gonna say that warlocks. This is my prediction is that when the 1D&D version of warlocks come out, is that depending on your patron will decide which family of spells you get to choose from. So if your patron is Fey, you get primal spells. If your patron is one of the old gods, you'll get divine. If your patron is an astral, an extrastellar being, then you'll get arcane. I think that's what's going to end up happening. Mark my words. And then the last thing that they covered is they cleaned up a few terms. One of the things that they did clean up is unarmed strikes. And unarmed strikes have always been tricky. Monks make a big deal out of it. They get tons of them. Their damage goes up with them. Well, they've changed it now that instead of there's no dice involved when it comes to the damage for a basic unarmed strike. It is just 1 plus your strength modifier, full of badging, which is fine. That's pretty rad. That's a solid. It makes it very easy to augment. You could say if you're wearing gauntlets, get +1 to this damage. I've got these spiked knuckles. Instead of it being bludgeoning, it's slashing. There's all kinds of ways to make that, to adjust that, and then it also points out that monks are actually going to be doing even better, because that means that their base goes up to D4. They're at least doing the 1, goes up to D6, D8, so forth and so on. I like that, but one of the things they changed with unarmed strikes is that unless it says otherwise, it is not a weapon. So things like magic weapon, paladin smite, all that kind of stuff, they do not apply. Unarmed strike is just a type of attack, which I kind of dig. I know a lot of people were like, my paladin should be able to punch and smite. I don't know. There needs to be some kind of drawback. Ooh, which actually reminds me, you got to talk about criticals again in a minute. But one of the other things that the unarmed strike is altered is that when you hit somebody, you can do damage. You can knock them back, kind of push them down, that sort of thing, or you can grapple them. It's no longer a secondary test. It's just when I make my unarmed strike, when I succeed, I have a choice of what my unarmed strike success does. I like it. I think it makes things so much easier, especially considering that grappling in 5e is not that powerful. It's not like it used to be. Pushing someone off a cliff is cool. It does lead to some pretty neat things, and it does mean that monk, if you're thinking, you could totally be like, all right, so my monk who's got 3 strikes, my first one I connect with, I'm going to push you to the ground. Okay, cool. My second one now has advantage because you're prone. I'm going to have that one be grappling. And then my third one, because now you are prone and you're movement 0, I'm just going to plant punches into your kidneys while you can't get away from me. It's very, I can see that scene going through my mind. Is that first attack was like a foot sweep, doesn't do any damage, knocks you down. Second one is I jumped on top of them and I wrapped them up like a jiu-jitsu guy. And my third one is kidney punches. I like that. I think that that's actually a really cool way of handling unarmed strikes, and it also gets rid of all the unnecessary mechanics for bull rush and grappling, and also leads, you can have cool feats of, instead of getting a bonus to grapple, you could have a feat that's maybe like, while grappling, you do this extra thing. Or while grappling, your damage is increased by 1 die. Or whatever. I think that as a design option is very cool. Coming back, one last thing, I saw my notes. The last thing I do want to talk about, I mentioned smite. So it's no secret that I think that the Paladin Smite, the way it is worded, is really, really overpowered. I don't like it. Yeah, you get to spend it. You have to spend a spell level, and you get to throw a bunch of extra dice on damage. But I don't like the fact that you get to choose to do it after the die has been cast. So therefore, you never waste it. There's never a risk to it. It's just always reward. And if you ever roll a crit, you're guaranteed to be like, well, I crit smite because I'm going to get all these extra dice of damage, because everything that's dice based for the attack in 5e, as it is, doubles. That's going to change. 1D&D, the only thing that gets doubled is your initial attack damage. All add-on stuff, sneak attack dice, no longer doubled. The smite dice, no longer doubled. Some kind of weird poison that does extra dice, no longer doubled. All the rest of that is just considered a damage modifier to you stabbing somebody better in the kidneys. And I am so on board for that, because one of the things that it makes me crazy is that berserker with the giant two-handed axe, he gets his crit 2d12 plus 4. Yeah. That halfling thief with his 3-inch long dagger sticks the guy, gets his 2d4 crit damage, but then 7d6 or 12d6 doubled sneak attack. This knife can only do so much. If I'm going to crit with the axe, it should be a bigger effect than... Yeah, he's still getting that cool sneak attack bonus, but the actual crit effect is only this knife hitting in a particular spot. That's my opinion, and I think that's cool. What I don't like about the altered crits is that spell attacks can no longer critical hit. I'm a little torn on this, because I do know that there's several spells that roll to hit multiple times. They could possibly get, like Scorching Ray. If you fling like 4 Scorching Rays at somebody and like 2 of them end up critting, that's a lot of dice of damage. But I also know, unlike someone swinging a sword, unlike somebody who's got an axe or an arrow or whatever, spells are a finite resource. So basically telling them that not only can they only do so many spells a day, but then those spells are also hindered by the fact that you can't get a lucky strike on it. I don't like that. I'm not a fan. I think that spells should be able to crit, but I definitely like the fact that all of the add-on dice, that the only thing that gets the only thing that gets doubled are this is the base dice of damage for the weapon, and I'm on board with. So that's really everything from the initial playtest that I had notes for. Now my thoughts on the whole situation. So 1D&D is kind of a cool concept that they're updating things, but I think that they are missing an opportunity. I think WotC is missing an opportunity. Rather than making it a rules adaptation or a rules update, they should sell this book. They should sell the anniversary edition, the D&D, the anniversary, the 10th edition, 5th Ed Anniversary Chronicles book, and make it a book full of cool optional rules. The kind of thing that they put into the Dungeon Master's Guide, the kind of thing they put into some of the source books that was like, if you want to do this, you should do this, and this is what we found to be cool. Everything that I just told you, with the exception of the actual spell list changes and the character creation changes, all the rest of that stuff, every D20 manipulation, how they change crits, how they're changing the D20 test, all of that stuff, I think would be better served as optional rules that you can bring to your table. And if they compiled those in a book, call that book the Anniversary Edition or something like that, the One D&D Chronicles tome or whatever, you make it a slightly smaller book, so you don't have to reprint a player's handbook, you don't have to reprint all these things, and you just basically put this book out and say, here is what you can do for your table, and here's what we've seen as cool ways to enhance your game. rather than going in and creating this schism that says you've been doing it wrong, you've been, the way you play is wrong and old-minded and you shouldn't do it, here's this new way to do it that's right. Rather than doing that way and creating a even further break in the style of the cinema versus crunch style of gaming, is just give everybody the tools to choose whether or not they do it. I mean, every single book starts with the rule zero of the DM can throw it out. The DM does what you need to do to make the game work and make the game pleasant. Rather than forcing DMs to use that if they don't like what you're putting out, lean the other way. Put out stuff that you're not forcing the DMs to use, but they totally can. It could be cool. And let the players and the DMs decide if they like this, rather than forcing a new type of edition and forcing the change in rules that everybody's going to have to abide to. Is you say we're playing 5th edition with the alternate D20 test, or with the alternate crit rules, or with, and then you give each one of those rules like their own fancy name, whatever you want to do. And that way, if I sit down at the table, I know what you're doing. It's based off 5e, and here are these cool house rules that you're using, because it's all labeled out, it's all listed out, and it's right there. It's all about communication. Rather than saying everything you know about 5e is changing, and forcing those DMs to say, I don't like this, I'm not going to use this, because now you get a new player who is up to date on everything, because you've made everything into how the new rules work. And if you've got players who've been playing a long time that don't want to use those rules, now you suddenly have to remind this new player, oh, I know it says this in the book, or go to a convention, you play with a brand new group of people. Instead of saying, hey, we're playing 5e with altered crits. Instead, now you got to say, hey, we're playing 5e, but we're ignoring a bunch of One D&D stuff, the stuff you might be using to play your game at home. A lot of it's about delivery. A lot of it's about accessibility. And I personally think that it is better to give options than to change things for the minority of... I shouldn't even say that. It should just give everyone the opportunity, whether the majority, minority, or one fan. Give them all the opportunities to make the game what it is, rather than make the game what it currently isn't. And what you're setting yourselves up to do is make it so players have to change things away from the way that it is, rather than just augmenting what you already have. Just my opinion. All right. Hey, I've been going on for a while. You're probably tired of seeing my face. So please, 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 again, heartfelt love goes out to you guys. Please make the play, make everywhere you go better than when you leave it, or better when you leave it than when you got there. Be safe, get boosted, get vaxxed, mask if you have to. Just put smiles on other people's faces, enjoy yourselves, and play some games. We will see you next week with a very, very cool, special, new type of Tales from a Professional Nerd. See ya.